Alright, so now y'all believe me? I've been literally saying this 5 years. I'm about to break it down for you.
5 years of being ignored. 5 years of being dismissed. This was not just a rant. This was a man cashing in everything the culture owed him. And it got personal fast.
Cause y'all trying to take money out of my family's mouth. Money out of my family's mouth.
And the name at the center of all that rage, Gucci Mane. What 6ix9ine found inside that evidence changed everything. The song that set the internet on fire. The internet broke on April 10th, 2026. A live stream, a rant, clips on every platform. At the center, a man told for 5 years to sit down, standing in front of the rap game and saying 4 words. Now y'all, believe me, for half a decade, Tekashi 6ix9ine has carried a label that the culture stamped onto him and never took back. The man who cooperated, the man who testified, the man who sat in a federal courtroom and named names while his co-defendants stared him down from across the room. That word snitch became so attached to his identity that it followed him everywhere he went, online and off, in every headline, under every post, in every conversation where his name came up. It was his ceiling and his floor. No matter what he did, no matter what he said, no matter how many songs he released or how loud he screamed his arguments, the culture had made up its mind and was not moving. But on the night of April 10th, 2026, Gucci Mane, a man who built his legacy over 2 decades on a foundation that included prominently a very public code of silence, dropped a song called Crash Dummy that sent the internet into a full spin cycle. And when the clips of 6ix9ine reacting to that song hit the timeline, the explosion was immediate and total. The clips spread across TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube reaction channels, and Facebook within hours of dropping on April 10th and 11th, 2026. Sparking one of the most heated conversations the hip-hop internet has had in years about street code snitching and the selective way both get applied.
Alright, so now y'all believe me? I've been literally saying this 5 years. I'm about to break it down for you.
Those 6 seconds became the sound of the week. But before we get into the full chaos of what 6ix9ine said on that stream, before we walk through every exhibit he presented and every argument he made, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to understand what Crash Dummy was, why it existed, and what happened on January 10th, 2026 that made a song like that possible in the first place. Gucci Mane is one of the foundational architects of trap music, the founder of 1017 Records, a label that has launched careers, built legacies, and served as a launching pad for some of the most important Southern hip-hop artists of the last 15 years. To call him an institution is not hyperbole. It is a straightforward description of what his presence in the culture represents. That clip pulled from old footage and played back on 6ix9ine stream like it was being entered into evidence. Gucci. Mane, in his own words, laying out what he stood for. And there was more. There it is on camera, plainly stated. Gucci Mane swearing he would not cooperate under any circumstances. Not to any person, not to law enforcement. That was the code he said he lived by. That was the standard he had set for himself publicly and loudly over years. 6ix9ine's 5-word verdict on that old footage says everything. Because here's what changed between then and April 2026, a studio robbery in Dallas, a federal indictment with 9 names on it, and a diss track that the internet immediately began treating as the most publicly visible example of hypocrisy the genre had produced in recent memory. Let us go to January 10th, 2026. A business meeting was arranged at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. The meeting had been set up between Gucci Mane and one of his 1017 Records artists, Pooh Shiesty, born Lantrell Williams Jr. Pooh Shiesty had already served federal time on a prior gun conviction, come home and put out music that immediately showed the world he had not lost a step. He was moving, recording, and by most accounts, living the kind of post-prison comeback story that the culture celebrates. But he wanted out of his contract with Gucci's label. And according to federal prosecutors, the method he and his crew chose to pursue that exit was not a sit-down conversation, not lawyers, not negotiation. It was a kidnapping. What federal prosecutors allege happened in that Dallas studio is the following. Pushiest, his father, fellow rapper, Big 30, and 6 other individuals walked into a meeting Gucci believed was legitimate and turned it into an armed robbery. Prosecutors allege that once the victims were inside, Shiesty produced a weapon, held it to a victim, and forced the signing of documents to release him from the label deal. The crew then allegedly took jewelry, watches, and cash. One victim was allegedly choked. The door was barricaded. No one was leaving until the documents were signed. The evidence in the case was detailed. Studio footage, phone, records, ankle, monitor, location data. Shy had been on home confinement from his prior federal gun case. Fingerprints and social media posts where members of the group allegedly showed off the stolen items afterward. This was not a rumor floating around the internet. This was a federal criminal complaint with physical and digital evidence attached. On April 1st, 2026, Pusciesti, his father, Big 30, and 6 others were arrested on federal kidnapping and conspiracy charges. 8 of the 9 were taken into custody across Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. The United States Attorney held a press conference to announce federal kidnapping charges against multiple recording artists at once. That is the scale of what was happening.
8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pusciesti.
Bond was denied for several co-defendants. Pusciest remained in federal custody in Dallas, and Gucci Mane, who was referenced in court documents as identifying Sciesti, publicly stated he was not cooperating with authorities or testifying. An FBI agent reportedly indicated they had not heard directly from him. And yet, just 9 days after those arrests, Gucci Mane walked into the studio and made a song. Crash Dummy was produced by Zovan, Gucci's longtime collaborator, the architect of some of the most iconic beats in Atlanta rap history. And from the first bar to the last, the song was unmistakably about what happened in that Dallas studio. Without naming Pusciesti directly, Gucci described being set up at what he believed was a business meeting. He described people using his kindness against him. He described the perpetrators as crash dummies. And in one of the most quoted moments of the track, he referenced the fact that the man who allegedly robbed him was still signed to his label. Because the documents signed under duress, forced at gunpoint, do not constitute a legal contract release. The debate that erupted online was immediate and loud. Gucci's camp argued he had not cooperated with law enforcement, that he was not testifying, that releasing a song about something that happened to him is not the same as sitting down with prosecutors. His critics, and there were many, argued that making a song that publicly narrates an active federal case while the suspects are still awaiting trial is its own form of assisting the prosecution. They called it dry snitching. And the one person in the entire music industry who was absolutely positioned to make that argument louder than anyone else on the planet was sitting at home watching it unfold. And he got on stream.
Do you hear your stupid ass? Yo, I'm gonna put your shit on your commissary.
That is 6ix9ine. That is years of being told to sit down, cracking through the surface all at once. Now, we are going to break down everything he said and everything he meant. 6ix9ine's case against the code. We pick back up on the night of April 10th, 2026, inside one of the most electric and historically significant live streams hip-hop has watched in years. The stream is hosted by Aiden Ross, with N3 on also present. The guest is Daniel Hernandez, known to the culture as Tekashi 6ix9ine, known to the internet as the man they could not stop watching, even when they claimed they had stopped watching. To understand the full weight of what happened on that stream, you need to hold the entire 5-year arc in your mind at once. In 2018, 6ix9ine was 22 years old. He had a song that was everywhere, a look that was impossible to ignore, and a federal RICO case that was going to put him away for the rest of his productive years if he chose to fight it. He cooperated with the government. He testified against his co-defendants in the 9 Trey Gangster Bloods case. He named names, gave details, and walked out of federal custody significantly earlier than the sentence he faced. The culture responded with one of its most sustained collective rejections of a single artist in recent memory. He was black, bald, features dried up. Events would not book him. Every time he tried to participate in a conversation about the industry, he was dismissed before the first sentence was finished. He became the benchmark against which street credibility was measured. The cautionary tale, the example, the punchline. But for 5 years, through all of that, 6ix9ine kept asking the same question. What happens when it happens to someone else? What happens when the artists who preach the code, loudest, end up in a position where the code cannot save them? What happens when the federal government comes for someone with actual credibility in the culture?
Yo, what happened? Remember 6ix9ine situation? Y'all remember the 6ix9ine situation? When y'all say, it's the streets, you know what you signed up for?
But what 6ix9ine was doing on that stream methodically, furiously with the controlled energy of someone who has rehearsed this argument in his head for years, was turning that sentence around and pointing it at everyone who had used it. He lined up old footage of Gucci Mane preaching the code, played it back, and then laid next to it everything that had happened since April 1st, 2026.
Now you're a businessman? How many excuses? How many times? No, it's different.
He made that argument about race explicitly during the stream. He said outright that the reason Gucci was receiving more grace than he ever received is because of race, that the culture applies its standards differently depending on who you are and what you look like. That is a loaded and uncomfortable argument that does not have a simple resolution, and it sent a separate thread of debate running through every comment section simultaneously.
Cause y'all trying to take money out my family's mouth. Money out my family's mouth.
Then the stream went somewhere that not everyone expected technical, because one of the most compelling and, depending on your background, most credible parts of 6ix9ine's rant was not the cultural argument or the personal pain. It was the breakdown of how federal prosecution actually functions.
The justice system does not ground. When I mean the justice system, I mean the Department of Justice, which is United States America versus whatever your last name is, right?
This is a man who has sat in a federal courtroom, who has looked at a charging document that says United States of America versus Daniel Hernandez, and understood viscerally what that means in terms of the resources and power aligned against a single individual. He went on to explain, with a level of accuracy, that legal observers noted was essentially correct. The difference between state-level charges and federal charges. He explained what a grand jury subpoena means when it arrives from a federal court. He explained that there is no constitutional provision for the street code. There is no amendment protecting you from contempt charges if you refuse a federal judge's order to testify.
Gucci Mane, whether he's telling or his cameraman is telling, right? You know what the feds do?
He was setting up the mechanics because his argument was not that Gucci is morally deficient or personally a bad man. His argument was structural, that the federal government is a machine that does not care what code you believe in or what reputation you have built over 20 years in the music industry. The stream ended with something no one quite expected. After all the evidence, all the exhibits, all the legal breakdowns and the cultural arguments and the financial grievances, that 6ix9ine picked up a piece of paper and read a Bible verse.
Let me read this shit for you. This is God. All who rage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced.
Whether you find that moment powerful or absurd probably tells you exactly where you stand on everything that came before it. But either way, by the time those streams were clipped and posted and shared and screenshotted and reposted to every platform on the internet, the damage was done. The grenade was in the air, and it was about to land in the middle of the whole rap world, which means it was time for everyone else to start talking. The rap world weighs in, and nobody agrees on anything. By the morning of April 11th, 2026, the clips had achieved the kind of velocity that happens maybe twice a year in hip-hop internet culture. The kind where it is not just rap fans watching anymore, it is everyone. Your uncle who doesn't even know who Pushiest is. Your coworker who asked you what a 6ix9ine was. The algorithm had picked these clips up and carried them to every corner of every feed on every platform. And what was underneath all the chaos and all the noise was a question that the culture genuinely did not have an easy answer to. And when the culture does not have an easy answer, what you get is an explosion of opinions from every direction at once. The first voice that rose above the noise with something sharp, quotable, and immediately iconic came from Freddie Gibbs. Gibbs went to Instagram stories within hours of Crash Dummy dropping, and with the economical precision that has always been one of his strengths, delivered a reaction that the internet immediately turned into a piece of furniture in this story. He wrote that the whole situation had to be artificial intelligence because the idea that a man of Gucci Mane stature would release a track narrating a federal crime on a beat from his most iconic producer was simply too absurd to be real. His second post put it so plainly and so perfectly that it became a meme before the day was out. A man had snitched on a Beethoven beat. The alignment between Gibbs and 6ix9ine on this specific point, two people who agree on almost nothing, was itself a story within the story. DJ Academics came at it from a different angle, but arrived at a similar conclusion, and his was the most aggressive take on the double standard argument. Academics argued on stream that hip-hop as a culture owed Tekashi 6ix9ine a formal apology. His reasoning was direct. In 2018, 6ix9ine cooperated with the government and was immediately and permanently destroyed by the culture. The black ball was total and it was swift. In 2026, Gucci Mane releases a song publicly narrating the details of an active federal kidnapping case involving one of his own artists. And instead of an immediate verdict, the culture gets days of nuanced debate, competing perspectives, and careful qualifications. Academics pointed out that there was documented video-recorded evidence of 6ix9ine's own kidnapping, that he had been physically abducted and robbed before he ever cooperated, a fact the culture had consistently ignored when deciding what to call him. He argued that the selective application of the standard was impossible to defend intellectually. Academics debated this point at length with Wack 100, who took the position that Gucci Mane's situation was fundamentally different because the robbery was already documented on camera. The evidence existed before the song. Gucci did not create new information for prosecutors. The studio had footage, the phone records existed, the ankle monitor data was already in government hands. WAC 100's reading, making a song about what was done to you is not the same as walking into a government office and providing testimony. It is an artist processing trauma, and that distinction, he argued, matters. That debate, whether there is a meaningful legal or moral difference between direct cooperation with prosecutors and publicly narrating an active federal case in song form, is one of the more genuinely interesting philosophical questions to come out of the entire situation. It does not have a clean answer, and the fact that it does not have a clean answer is part of what kept the conversation going. Waka Flocka Flame contributed something that reframed the security question in a way that had not been widely discussed before his comments circulated. Waka described a personal experience from when he worked with Gucci, specifically being introduced to a member of Gucci's security team.
When I did my video with Gucci Mane, I went to Atlanta and I met Gucci Mane for the first time, and we did our song, we did the video.
That detail alone is scene setting, but what followed is what changed the temperature of the conversation in an entirely different direction.
I'm an off-duty officer, and I'm a retired police officer. That's what he said, I'm a retired police officer.
A retired police officer working security for Gucci Mane present, according to Waka's framing, as part of Gucci's regular security detail. Waka's point was careful and important when a law enforcement officer, active, retired, or off-duty, is present when a crime is committed. That person operates under a different code entirely from the hip-hop street code. They have their own obligations. They cannot be instructed by their employer to ignore what they witnessed. The culture can debate what Gucci Mane is or is not obligated to do. But the retired officer at his side, that person answers to a different authority. And in a federal kidnapping investigation, the presence of even one person with law enforcement, background in the victim's party, changes what the government can access, what it can compel, and how quickly it can build a case that was always going to get built. WKO was clear that he was not personally calling Gucci a snitch. He was pointing out the structural reality that when you have law enforcement around you as part of your regular team, the idea that the code will function as a wall between you and the federal government becomes significantly more complicated.
I don't like it for either side. You know what I'm talking about? Guwap most definitely didn't deserve that, and I don't want to see this for the little homie Pooh Shiesty.
But Rick Ross approached the entire situation from the business floor up, and his comments were noticeably measured in a situation where most people were picking sides loudly. Ross's argument was fundamentally about process and preparation. If you are an artist who wants out of a recording contract, there are mechanisms for that. There are lawyers and renegotiations and structured exits and buyout clauses and industry standard tools for navigating disagreements between a label and its talent. Those tools exist precisely because these situations arise all the time, and because the music business has enough complexity and enough money involved that people have developed formal processes for resolving disputes. Walking into a studio with weapons and forcing signatures at gunpoint is not a negotiation. It is a crime. And the consequence of choosing that path over the legitimate one is not just legal. It is the implosion of everything you work to build. On the way back up, Boozy Badass's reaction was one of the most human and unfiltered moments to emerge from the entire wave of responses, because it was captured as he was processing the information in real time. This is a man who has his own history with the federal system. He knows the weight of what federal charges mean, and watching him sit with what he was being told was like watching someone work through a grief they did not quite know how to hold. 3 repetitions of the same 2 words, each landing with slightly more weight than the one before. Because this is not a Twitter rumor. This is not an industry gossip post. This is the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas holding a press conference. This is federal kidnapping. This is 9 people arrested across 3 cities. This is as real as it gets, and the people in the culture who knew what real looked like could feel it. Honeycomb Brazy's comments cut to what many observers considered the real tragedy buried beneath the drama. Not the legal outcome, not the street code debate, but the squandered potential. The story of what Pooh Shiesty was before this happened. He did not flop. He went to the charts. He had the cars, the tours, the lifestyle, the comeback story that the culture loves to celebrate. He had the full package of a man who had done his time, came home, and showed the world he was still everything he had been before. All of that built back from zero. And then, according to everyone who weighed in with any version of this argument, Pride walked through the door and took it all back. Pooh Shiesty, as of April 11th, 2026, remained in federal custody with bond denied. And in one of those ironies, that sounds like it was written for a movie rather than lived in real life, he was still technically signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 Records. The contract he allegedly tried to escape through armed robbery had not been voided. The deal he allegedly forced signatures to undo was still legally intact. The attempted robbery of a record deal ended with the artist still in the deal and facing federal kidnapping charges. That is not a commentary. That is just the outcome. Gucci Mane has not responded to 6ix9ine's rant. As of April 11th, 2026, he has not addressed the street code accusations. has not spoken publicly about the viral clips, and has not released a statement of any kind in response to the wave of reactions from across the industry. Whether that silence is strategy, dignity, or something else entirely, only he knows. But in the absence of a response, the internet has continued to fill the space with its own verdicts, and that brings everything back to the one person who set the whole conversation in motion. Not Gucci, not Pusciesti, not the Dallas studio. It comes back to a man with rainbow hair and a face full of tattoos, who has been sitting on the outside of hip-hop's inner circle for 5 years, pointing at the walls and saying, "The code is not what you think it is. The code is not a principle. It is a performance. And when it is your turn, when the government puts your name on that piece of paper and the United States of America is standing on the other side of the table, you will find out what the code actually means, which is in most cases not as much as you thought." Sex's and 6ix9ine's position throughout this entire conversation has never been that the code is wrong as a concept. His position is that the code is applied selectively, arbitrarily, and with a consistency that tracks exactly with popularity and cultural allegiance, and nothing else. And whether you love him or hate him. And most of the rap internet falls firmly into the latter category. The events of April 2026 have given that argument more concrete, documented real-world evidence than it has ever had before. The situation is still developing. The legal case against Puy Big 30 and the co-defendants is ongoing. New reactions are dropping hourly across every platform. And somewhere in all of this noise and all of the clips and the memes and the Exhibit A's and the Bible verses and the Zovan beats, hip-hop is being asked a question it does not have a clean answer to. What does the code actually mean? Who does it actually protect? And is it a code at all, or just a story the culture tells itself?